In this video, we'll be setting up the drawing environment in Adobe Photoshop. Let's set up our Adobe Photoshop environment. The most important thing that I want to bring to your attention when first setting up your environment are these pull-down menus. And the one we're going to start with is the window pull-down menu. Each of these words that are listed here represent a panel with hundreds of different ways that you can use the tools and the commands. So let's bring up some of the panels that we're going to need for lesson 1. You're going to learn the tools in the order that you need them. There's no way that we can memorize or even use all of these tools. I don't even use all of these tools. Okay, so the very first one on our list is the options panel. So I'm going to pick on that. And that's this horizontal band across the top of my screen. And if I want to move it, I just pick on this gray band and drag it. Whenever you drag and drop a panel or a toolbar, when it begins to be docked, you'll see a little blue band let up on your mouse. So if you want to move it, pick on the gray band, hold your mouse down, and drag it down. If you want to dock it, pick on the gray band and drag it slowly up until you see the blue band, and then let your finger off the mouse. What's important about the options panel, and I never ever render without it, is that this is a dynamic band that changes depending on what tool or panel is active at the time. It's super important. So let's go back to the window pull down menu and we'll deploy our main tool set here. Many professional illustrators or photographers prefer to pick on this double arrow and have one long line of icons. I don't like to do this. I learned with a double column and I still prefer it 20 years later, 30 years later. Okay, now on the main toolbar, if you hover over an icon, Photoshop will identify what it is for you. In parentheses, it will also tell you what the shortcut key command is. Once you start learning how you can operate in Photoshop, you will know what tools you want to select in advance. You will become quicker and quicker, and that will necessitate that you use the keyboard commands. More on that later. Let's go to the window pull-down menu and select the history. So the history tool is interesting. Every command that you do is recorded here in a little layer state or a step. And if you make a mistake, you simply just go back one in your history layer or your history step, and it will undo it. So in Photoshop, mistakes can be modified very, very easily with this tool. So I never leave this off of my drawing environment. It's always up. Going back to the window pull-down menu, layers, very important. Depending on what file you have open will determine how many layers you have. You always at least have one background layer. In this first lesson, lesson 1, we have a reference photograph here and it's on its own layer. And we have the background layer here. For most of our projects, we will make a copy of the background layer, which is Command J on the keyboard or Control J on a PC, or you can drag this down to, you can pick and hold on the band. Don't pick on the word, just pick in a clear area on the band and drag that to the plus sign, and it will make a duplicate of the background. Then I usually turn the regular background off. This is my little insurance in case something goes wrong when I'm rendering this one. I can start over with this background. Okay, that's just one technique that you can use to sort of safeguard your work. It's a good one for beginners. Okay, let's go back to the pull down menu and we will look at Navigator. Now, most people prefer to use the zoom tool, but some beginners like to use the Navigator. So what the Navigator does is just zoom in or zoom out. Zoom in or out. Now let's say we zoom really close in on a spot, but we want to be closer to the top of the chair. You can move this little rectangle here around in this little navigator box, and it will navigate you around your composition as well. So some beginners really love this, and until you get the hang of the zoom command, which is Z on your keyboard, it's also this little magnifying icon, you might want to use the Navigator. And works is, if you look up on your options panel, I have the magnifying glass deployed, which is the zoom tool. I have the option of starting with magnifying or zooming out. So if I pick and hold down on my mouse, pick and drag away from me, pick, hold it down and drag away from me, I can get very close. And you can see that this raster image is made up of pixels, these beautiful square pixels. Now, at any time, I could just switch the icon to the demagnify and pick on my screen. Pick, 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 pick with my mouse. Pick. I'm not dragging, I'm just picking. It doesn't really matter which one is the current tool that's depressed. If I want to magnify, I just pick and drag away from me. If I want to demagnify, I can hold down the option button. See how it changes from a plus to a minus on the little magnifier, and pick on the fly. Now it's options key on a Mac and it is the alt key on a PC. All right, so that's how the magnifying glass works. The other thing that you want to really be careful of is that your workspace is set to essentials. We don't typically use these other rendering environments. You would specifically go to those if you needed them. So in other words, you just want to stay in essentials. All right, so for tool 1, all right, for lesson 1, this is all you're going to need. Layers, history, you may want the navigator tool, and you'll need options, and you'll need your main toolbar. Let's get started.